The conference room aboard the human embassy ship was cold. Jinho sat at the long table, his hands folded in his lap, trying not to show how nervous he felt. Around him, 5 other diplomats whispered to each other, but he stayed quiet. He had learned long ago that listening was more important than talking. Ambassador Juan stood at the head of the table. He was an old man, with gray hair and tired eyes, but his voice was strong. "The Galactic Council has made their decision," he said. "The Velthari Empire needs an alliance. They're offering a marriage between their princess and a representative from another species." Jinho felt his stomach tighten. He knew what was coming. "The Velthari chose us," Juan continued. "They want a human. This is the opportunity we've been waiting for. Humanity has been part of the Council for only 30 years. Most species still see us as newcomers. This alliance would change everything." One of the other diplomats, a woman named Unji, spoke up. "Why would they choose us? There are species with more military power, more resources." Juan smiled slightly. "That's exactly why they chose us. The Velthari don't need resources. They need something different. They've studied our culture. They find us." Interesting. Jinho wanted to ask what that meant, but Juan was already looking at him. The old man's eyes were apologetic but determined. "Jinho," Juan said softly, "I'm recommending you for this assignment." The room went silent. Jinho felt everyone staring at him. His mouth went dry. "Me?" he managed to say. "You have the right qualities," Juan explained. "You're calm under pressure. You understand alien psychology. You've studied more xenocultures than anyone else in our delegation. And most importantly, you're adaptable." Jinho thought about his small apartment back on Earth. He thought about his sister, Dami, who worked as a medical researcher on another ship. He thought about the quiet life he had hoped for after this assignment ended. "I don't have a choice, do I?" Jinho asked. Juan shook his head slowly. "You do have a choice. I won't force you. But I'm asking you to consider what this means for humanity. We could save millions of lives if this alliance stops the war." The war. Everyone knew about the Scarrick swarm. They were a hive-mind species that consumed everything in their path. They had already destroyed 6 colony worlds. The Galactic Council was losing. Jinho closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "When do I leave?" 3 days later, Jinho stood on the bridge of a human transport ship, watching the Velthari homeworld grow larger in the viewport. Velth Prime was beautiful. The planet sparkled like a jewel, covered in crystalline structures that caught the light of its sun. The Velthari themselves were made partly of living crystal, and they had built their entire civilization to reflect that. Dami stood beside him. She had insisted on coming along as part of the medical team. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "You can still change your mind." "No, I can't," Jinho replied. "Too many people are counting on this. I'm your sister. I'm counting on you being happy." Jinho smiled at her. "I'll be fine. It's just a political arrangement. The princess probably doesn't want this any more than I do." He had no idea how right he was. On Velth Prime, in the Crystal Palace at the heart of the capital city, Princess Aravine stood before her father. Emperor Tholvek sat on his throne, his crystalline skin glowing with a soft blue light. His face was hard to read, but Aravin had learned to sense his moods through the telepathic connection all Velthari shared. "You cannot do this to me," Aravin said, her voice shaking with anger. "I am a warrior. I have fought for our empire. I have bled for our people. And now, you want to marry me off like I'm some kind of prize? You are my daughter," Tholvek replied calmly. "And you are the heir to the throne. Your duty is to the empire, not to your own desires." "My duty?" Aravin's hands clenched into fists. "I have done my duty every day of my life. I have led our fleets against the Scarricks. I have won battles that should have been impossible. What more do you want from me?" "I want you to understand that leadership is not just about winning battles," her father said. His telepathic presence pressed against her mind, heavy with disappointment. It is about making difficult choices. The human alliance could turn the tide of this war. Their technology is strange, but effective. Their way of thinking is different from ours. We need them. Then make the alliance without selling me. Aravind shot back. The humans understand symbols, Tholvek explained. They understand commitment. A political marriage means something to them. It means trust. Aravind turned away from him, walking to the tall windows that overlooked the city. Below, she could see her people going about their lives. They had no idea how close they were to losing everything. The Scarix were coming. Everyone knew it. The question was not if they would attack, but when. "What is he like?" she asked finally. "This human they're sending. His name is Jinho. He is a diplomat and a cultural specialist. By human standards, he is considered thoughtful and kind." Aravind laughed bitterly. Thoughtful and kind. How wonderful. I'm sure he'll be very thoughtful as he takes credit for my accomplishments. I'm sure he'll be very kind as he expects me to give up everything I've worked for. "You don't know that," Tholvek said. "I know enough about political marriages," Aravind replied. "I've studied history. I know what happens to princesses who are traded like cargo." She turned back to face her father. Her eyes were blazing with determination. "I will attend the ceremony because you command it. But I will not accept this human. I will not smile and pretend this is what I want. I will resist this with everything I have." Tholvek stood up from his throne. For a moment, he looked old and tired. "I hope you change your mind," he said softly. "For all our sakes." Aravind left the throne room without another word. She walked through the crystal corridors of the palace, her military boots clicking against the smooth floor. Guards stood at attention as she passed, but she barely noticed them. Her mind was full of anger and frustration. She reached her private quarters and sealed the door behind her. The room was simple for a princess. She had removed most of the decorations years ago, keeping only what was practical: a bed, a desk, weapons mounted on the wall. She had always been more comfortable in military barracks than in palaces. Aravind walked to the large window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere up there, human ships were approaching. Somewhere up there was the man who would try to take away her freedom. She pressed her hand against the cool crystal of the window. "I don't care who you are," she whispered. "I don't care what you look like or what you say. I will not marry you. I will not give up my life for politics." But even as she said the words, a small part of her wondered, what kind of person volunteers for an arrangement like this? What kind of man agrees to marry someone he's never met? She pushed the thoughts away. It didn't matter. She would reject him in front of the entire court. She would make it clear that she could not be controlled. And then, maybe, her father would finally understand that she was not a tool to be used. Aravind turned away from the window and began preparing for the ceremony. She chose her most impressive military uniform, the one she wore when addressing her troops. She wanted this human to understand exactly who he was dealing with. She was not some delicate princess waiting to be rescued. She was a warrior, and she would fight for her freedom, no matter what it cost. Tomorrow, she would meet this Jinho. Tomorrow, she would end this foolishness. Tomorrow, everything would be clear. She had no idea how wrong she was. The crystal hall was enormous. Jinho stood at the entrance, trying not to feel small. The ceiling stretched up so high, he could barely see it. Every surface was made of the same living crystal that covered the planet, glowing with soft colors that shifted and changed. Hundreds of Velthari filled the hall, their crystalline skin reflecting light in all directions. Dami adjusted his formal uniform one more time. "Stop fidgeting," she whispered. "You look fine. I feel like I'm about to throw up." Jinho admitted. "Don't do that. It would be very bad for diplomatic relations." Despite his nerves, Jinho smiled. His sister always knew how to make him feel better. She squeezed his hand once. then stepped back to join the other human observers. Ambassador Juan appeared beside him. "Remember what I taught you," the old man said. "The Velthari communicate through telepathy as well as speech. They can sense your emotional state. Don't try to hide what you're feeling. They'll respect honesty more than false confidence." "That's not exactly comforting," Jinho muttered. "It's not meant to be comforting. It's meant to be useful." Juan paused. "The princess is strong-willed. Don't take anything she says personally. This situation is difficult for her too." Before Jinho could respond, a deep sound rang through the hall. It wasn't quite a bell or a gong, but something in between. Everyone fell silent. Emperor Tholvek entered from a side door. He was tall, even for a Velthari, and his crystalline skin glowed with a deep blue light that spoke of age and power. He took his place on the elevated platform at the front of the hall. "Today," the Emperor's voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in Galactic Common so the humans could understand. "We welcome our friends from Earth. Today, we take the first step toward an alliance that will protect both our peoples." Jinho felt every eye in the room turn toward him. He kept his face calm, the way he had practiced. His heart was pounding, but he focused on breathing slowly. "Princess Aravin," the Emperor called. "Please join us." Another door opened. Jinho turned to look. The princess entered the hall in full military dress. Her uniform was dark, almost black, with silver markings that indicated her rank. She wore no jewelry, no crown. Her hair was pulled back severely. Her crystalline skin glowed with a reddish tint that Jinho had learned meant anger or determination. She walked across the hall with perfect military precision. Her face was set in a hard expression. Everything about her radiated strength and control. She looked like someone who could command armies, who could face down enemies without flinching. She looked, Jinho thought, absolutely terrified. It was just a flicker, barely visible, but he saw it. The slight tension around her eyes, the way her hands stayed very still at her sides, as if she was afraid they might shake. He had studied xenopsychology for years. He knew how to read people, even alien people. Aravin reached the platform and turned to face him. She opened her mouth to speak. She had clearly prepared something to say, something cutting and final. Then their eyes met. Aravin stopped. Her prepared speech died on her lips. Her eyes went wide with surprise. For Jinho, it was like standing in bright sunlight. He could feel something pressing against his mind. Not painful, but strange. Ambassador Juan had tried to explain Velthari telepathy, but experiencing it was completely different. It felt like someone was reading him, seeing all the way through him. He didn't try to hide anything. He let her see exactly what he was feeling. Nervousness, yes. Uncertainty, absolutely. But also, curiosity, respect, and most importantly, acceptance. He was thinking clearly about one thing. This was her choice. He would not force anything. He would not demand anything. If she said no, he would accept it and find another way to help his people. For Aravin, it was like nothing she had ever experienced. Most minds were loud, full of ambition and calculation and hidden motives. Velthari minds were especially loud because they were used to telepathy. They projected their thoughts powerfully, but this human's mind was quiet, clear, like looking into still water and seeing all the way to the bottom. There were no hidden agendas, no expectations, just genuine curiosity and a deep respect for whatever she chose to do. She had prepared herself to face someone who wanted to control her, someone who saw her as a prize to be won or a tool to be used. Instead, she found someone who seemed to see her as a person. The silence stretched. Everyone in the hall was watching. Jinho could feel the tension building. He needed to say something. None. He bowed, deep and formal, in the Velthari style he had practiced. When he straightened, he spoke in carefully learned Velthari. The words felt clumsy in his mouth, but he had memorized them perfectly. Princess Aravine, he said, I understand you did not choose this. Neither did I. But I am here to learn about your people, not to force anything upon you. Whatever you decide, I will respect. More silence. Aravin was staring at him like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve. Her reddish glow flickered, shifting toward a confused purple. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was shakier than she wanted it to be. I request a recess. I need time to think. Emperor Tholvek looked surprised, but he nodded. Granted. We will reconvene in 1 hour. Aravin turned and walked quickly from the hall. She didn't run, but it was close. The doors closed behind her with a sound like breaking ice. The hall erupted in whispered conversations. Jinho stood very still, unsure what had just happened. Had he done something wrong? Had he offended her somehow? Dami was at his side immediately. What was that? She asked. I have no idea, Jinho admitted. Ambassador Huan looked thoughtful. Interesting, he murmured. Very interesting. What's interesting? Jinho demanded. Did I ruin everything? On the contrary, Huan said slowly. I think you might have done something no one expected. You surprised her. In her private quarters, Aravine was pacing. Her mind was racing. Nothing had gone according to plan. She was supposed to reject him. She was supposed to be strong and unmovable. Instead, she had fled like a frightened child. What was wrong with that human? Why was his mind so quiet? Why did he seem to actually mean what he said? She stopped pacing and forced herself to think clearly. She had faced down enemy fleets. She had made life or death decisions in the heat of battle. She could handle one confused human, but something about the way he had looked at her, the way his thoughts had been so open and honest, had shaken her deeply. In the Velthari court, everyone wore masks. Everyone had hidden motives. Telepathy made people better at hiding, not worse, because everyone learned to project false emotions to cover their true feelings. This human couldn't project anything. He probably didn't even know she had read his thoughts. But somehow, that made him more honest than anyone she had ever met. Aravin walked to her computer terminal and pulled up the files on humans. She had read them before, of course, but she had been looking for weaknesses, for ways to reject the alliance. Now she read with different eyes. Humans couldn't communicate telepathically. They had to rely entirely on words and body language. Their entire civilization was built on trust and communication because they couldn't read each other's minds. They had a concept called love. Not the practical partnership that Velthari arranged, but something based on choice and emotion. Humans believed that the best marriages were ones where both people chose freely, where both people wanted to be together. What kind of species based something as important as family bonds on feelings instead of logic? Aravin kept reading. She learned about Earth's history, about their wars and their peace. She learned about their art and music. She learned about a species that seemed to value individual choice above almost everything else. And she learned about Jinho. His file was detailed. He had studied xenopsychology and alien cultures. He had worked on first contact missions with 3 other species. His evaluations all said the same things. Patient, empathetic, excellent at understanding alien perspectives. There was a note from his previous commander. Jinho has an unusual ability to make aliens feel heard and understood. He doesn't try to change them or fix them. He just listens. Aravin sat back in her chair. Her anger was fading, replaced by confusion. And something else. Curiosity. Maybe. Or possibility. A chime sounded. It was time to return to the crystal hall. Aravin stood up and checked her reflection. She looked calmer now, more in control. She walked back through the crystal corridors, her mind working through different scenarios. When she entered the hall, Jinho was standing in the same spot, waiting patiently. He looked nervous but not afraid. She walked up to him slowly. Everyone was watching again, but she ignored them. She stopped a few feet away and looked him in the eyes. "You meant what you said," she stated. "It wasn't a question." Jinho nodded. "Yes. You would actually let me refuse. You wouldn't argue or try to convince me." "That's right." "Why?" Aravan asked. "This alliance is important to your people. Aren't you supposed to make it work?" Jinho took a breath. "I'm supposed to try," he said carefully. "But I was also raised to believe that forcing someone into something they don't want is wrong. Even for a good cause. Even for my people." Aravan felt that strange sensation again, like sunlight on her mind. He was telling the absolute truth. He believed every word. She made a decision. "I'm not refusing," she said. "Not yet. But I want to talk to you first. Privately. Without all these people watching." Relief flooded Jinho's face. "I would like that very much." Emperor Tholevik spoke from his platform. "Then it is settled. The formal ceremony will be postponed. Princess Aravan and diplomat Jinho will have time to become acquainted." As the crowd began to disperse, Dami caught Jinho's eye and gave him a small thumbs up. He smiled back, feeling like, maybe, just maybe, this might actually work out. The imperial gardens were nothing like gardens on Earth. Instead of grass and flowers, there were crystalline structures that grew from the ground like frozen waterfalls. They caught the sunlight and split it into 1,000 colors. The air smelled strange but pleasant, like rain on warm stone. Jinho walked beside Princess Aravan along a path of smooth crystal. She had changed out of her military uniform into something simpler, though she still moved like a soldier. They had been walking in silence for several minutes. "You can ask questions," Aravan said finally. "I know you must have many." "I do," Jinho admitted. "But I wasn't sure if it was polite to ask them." "Politeness is appreciated, but honesty is more valuable." She glanced at him. "Your people can't use telepathy. That must make communication very difficult." "We manage," Jinho said with a small smile. "We've learned to pay attention to other things. Tone of voice, body language, the words people choose, and the words they avoid." "That sounds exhausting." "It can be. But it also means we can't take anything for granted. We have to really listen to each other." They reached a bench made of crystal that had been shaped to be comfortable. Aravan sat down, and Jinho sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Why did you agree to this?" Aravan asked directly. "Why would you volunteer to marry someone you've never met?" Jinho was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Ambassador Huan told me this alliance could save lives. He told me it was important for my people. And he was right. But that's not the only reason." "What's the other reason?" "I studied your culture," Jinho explained. "I read about the Velthari, about your history, and your values. And I thought, if I had to marry someone for political reasons, at least I could learn something." Aravan laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "You wanted to learn. That's very human. Very optimistic." "One. Is that bad?" "No," she said quietly. "It's just different. Velthari don't usually think that way. We're more practical. We do what must be done, whether we want to or not." "Is that why you're here?" Jinho asked. "Because you have to be?" "I'm here because my father commanded it. Because my people need this alliance. Because I have a duty." Her voice was bitter. "I've spent my whole life training to be a warrior. I've led fleets into battle. I've fought the Scarix face to face. And now, I'm expected to give all of that up to be someone's wife." "Who said you have to give it up?" Aravan turned to look at him, surprised. "That's what marriage means. One person has to sacrifice for the other. Usually the woman. Ain't you. Not on Earth," Jinho said. "On Earth, marriage is supposed to be a partnership. Both people keep doing what they're good at. Both people support each other. That sounds impossible. It's difficult, Jinho admitted. But it works when both people actually want it to work. When they choose each other. Jinho. Aravine was quiet for a long time. She looked out at the crystal gardens, her expression thoughtful. We don't have that concept here. Velthari marriages are arranged for practical reasons, combining family wealth, creating political alliances, producing strong offspring. Love is considered optional. That sounds lonely, Jinho said softly. It's efficient, Aravin replied, but her voice lacked conviction. Jinho took a chance. Can I tell you something? About why I actually said yes to this assignment? To the assignment. 2,200. And don't for made assigned. And don't 2,200. And don't 2,000. And don't 200. And don't 2,000. And don't 200. And don't 200. And don't 200. And don't 2. Please. I was picked for this because of my psychological profile. I'm calm. I'm adaptable. I'm good at understanding aliens. But the real reason I said yes was because I didn't have anyone waiting for me on Earth. No family except my sister. No romantic partner. No home I was desperate to return to. He paused. I said yes because I had nothing to lose. And maybe, in a strange way, that makes us similar. Aravine looked at him sharply. What do you mean? You're angry because you're being forced into this. I understand that. But I think maybe you're also angry because you're lonely. Because being a warrior, being perfect, being what everyone expects you to be, it doesn't leave room for anything else. Does it? For a moment, Aravin's face showed pure shock. Then her eyes hardened. You don't know anything about me. You're right, Jinyu said quickly. I'm sorry. That was too personal. No, Aravin said, her voice shaking slightly. No. You're right. That's what makes it worse. You've known me for less than a day, and you can see what my own people can't see. She stood up and walked a few steps away. Jinho stayed seated, giving her space. He could see her shoulders were tense. I defeated 3 Scarix incursions, Aravin said quietly. I saved thousands of lives. I did everything my father asked of me. But when I suggested new strategies, he said I was too aggressive. When I requested command of the main fleet, he said I was too young. And now he wants me to marry a stranger and pretend I'm happy about it. You don't have to pretend, Jinho said. Not with me. Aravine turned around. Why not? Everyone else expects me to pretend. To smile and be grateful for this opportunity. I'm not everyone else. They looked at each other for a long moment. Something passed between them. An understanding that didn't need words or telepathy. What if I asked you to walk away? Aravin said suddenly. What if I asked you to tell your ambassador this won't work? Would you do it? Monacat. Jinho stood up. Yes, he said simply. I told you I would respect your choice. I meant it. But your people need this alliance. They do. But I need to be able to live with myself. I can't build a future on forcing someone to do something they don't want. Aravin felt that clear, honest presence in her mind again. He meant every word. She had never met anyone like him. In her world, everyone had agendas. Everyone wanted something. But this human seemed to want nothing, except to understand her. What if I don't ask you to walk away? She said carefully. What would happen then? Then we would keep talking, Jinho said. We would learn about each other. We would figure out if we can actually work together. And if we can't, we'll find another solution. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. But it's possible. A chiming sound interrupted them. Both of them looked up to see a small floating device, a communication drone. It projected an image of Ambassador Juan. I apologize for the interruption. The ambassador's voice came through clearly. But there's urgent news. A Scarix scout fleet has been detected 3 systems away. They're headed in this direction. Aravine's entire posture changed instantly. The vulnerable person she had been moments ago vanished, replaced by the military commander. How many ships? 15 vessels. Small. But that's how it always starts. They're testing our defenses. I need to return to the palace, Aravind said immediately. I need to speak with the military council. Princess, Juan continued. Emperor Tholvek requests that the wedding ceremony proceed immediately. He believes the alliance needs to be formalized before the attack comes. Aravind's face went pale, then flushed with anger. Of course he does. Never waste a crisis. Jinho stepped forward. What do you want to do? He asked her quietly. What I want doesn't matter, Aravind snapped. Then she stopped herself. No. That's not true anymore, is it? You keep asking me what I want, like it actually matters. It does matter. Aravind looked at him for a long moment. Then, she made a decision. I want to lead the defense. That's what I'm good at. That's where I should be. Then do that, Jinho said. But the wedding, we can deal with politics later. Right now, your people need you to be a warrior, not a bride. Something shifted in Aravind's expression. Come with me, she said suddenly. Where? To the palace. To the military council. I want you to see what I actually do. I want you to understand who I really am. Before you decide anything. Jinho nodded. Okay. They walked quickly back through the gardens. Aravind was talking into her communication device, giving orders in rapid Velthari. Jinho couldn't understand most of it, but he could hear the authority in her voice. When they reached the palace, guards snapped to attention. Aravind barely noticed them. She led Jinho through corridors he hadn't seen before. Deeper into the military section of the palace, they entered a large room filled with holographic displays showing star maps and ship positions. Dozens of Velthari military officers were working at various stations. When Aravind entered, they all stood at attention. Report, Aravind commanded. A tall officer stepped forward. The Scarix scouts are moving in formation Delta. Based on their trajectory, they're likely probing for weaknesses in our defensive perimeter. Have they detected our sensor stations? Not yet, Princess. Aravind studied the holographic display, her eyes moving quickly across the data. Jinho watched her work, fascinated. This was completely different from the uncertain person in the garden. Here, she was confident, decisive, brilliant. Move 3rd Fleet to intercept position Gamma, Aravind ordered, and pull back our sensor stations by 30,000 kilometers. Make them work harder to find us. But Princess, that will leave a gap in our... I know what it will do. Aravind cut him off. It's a trap. When they move forward to investigate, we'll have them surrounded. The officer bowed. Yes, Princess. As the orders were implemented, Aravind turned to Jinho. Do you understand what's happening? I think so. You're using the Scarix's aggression against them, making them think they found a weakness, when really, they're walking into an ambush. Aravind smiled. It was the first genuine smile Jinho had seen from her. Exactly. This is what I do. This is who I am. It's impressive, Jinho said honestly. This is why I can't just be someone's wife, Aravind said quietly, so only he could hear. This is why I need to keep fighting. I know, Jinho said. And I'm not asking you to stop. At that moment, Emperor Tholvek entered the room. Everyone bowed, including Aravind. The Emperor looked at the display, then at his daughter. Well done, he said simply. But the Galactic Council is demanding an answer about the alliance. We need to formalize this wedding, Aravind. Let her finish her work first, Jinho said, surprising everyone. The Scarix are the real enemy. The politics can wait a few hours. The Emperor looked at Jinho with surprise, and something that might have been respect. Very well. But tonight, we will have an answer. One way or another. Verdi. As the Emperor left, Aravind looked at Jinho with an expression he couldn't quite read. You keep surprising me, she said. Good, Jinho replied. That means we're both still learning. That evening, Aravin stood in her private quarters, staring at her reflection. She had changed into a formal gown, the kind worn for important ceremonies. It felt strange. She was so much more comfortable in military uniform. A knock came at the door. Come in, she called. Emperor Tholvek entered. For a moment, he just looked at his daughter. You look like your mother, he said softly. Don't, Aravin said. Don't use her memory to make me do this. I'm not trying to manipulate you, her father said. I'm simply observing. Your mother would be proud of you, of what you've become. She would be angry that you're forcing me into this marriage. Tholvek sat down on a crystal bench near the window. I'm not forcing you. I'm asking you to make a choice for your people. There's a difference, is there? Aravin turned to face him. Because it feels the same from where I'm standing. Then let me tell you something I haven't told you before, her father said. Do you know why I chose the humans? Out of all the species we could have allied with, because they have technology we need, because they're desperate enough to agree to anything. No. Tholvek stood up. I chose them because I studied their culture. I learned about their concept of choice, about how they value individual freedom above almost everything else. And I thought, maybe this human could teach you something I never could. Aravin stared at him. What are you talking about? You think I don't see your pain, her father continued. You think I don't understand how lonely you are. But I do see it. I've always seen it. You've spent your whole life trying to prove yourself, trying to be perfect, because you thought that was what I wanted. But what I wanted was for you to be happy. Then why this? Aravin demanded, gesturing at her formal clothes. Why force this alliance? Because I'm running out of time to protect you, Tholvek said quietly. Our intelligence knows it. We have months at most before they launch a full invasion. And if that happens, if I die in the fighting, you'll be Empress. Alone. Without allies. Without support. Aravin felt her anger wavering. Her father looked old suddenly. Tired in a way she had never seen before. This human, Jinho. Tholvek continued. I chose him specifically. His records show he's kind, respectful, someone who values partnership. I thought, if you have to marry for politics, at least it should be someone who might actually care about you. You thought about all of that? Aravin asked softly. I'm your father. Of course I did. Aravin sat down on her bed, feeling overwhelmed. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know how to be both a warrior and a wife. Then don't be, her father said. Be yourself. Figure out the rest as you go. That's what your mother and I did. There was another knock at the door. This time, it was a palace servant. Princess, the ceremony is ready. The guests are assembled. Aravin looked at her father. What if I say no? Then you say no, Tholvek replied. And we find another way. But I hope you'll at least consider saying yes. Not for the alliance. Not for politics. But because I think this human might be good for you. Aravin made her decision. She stood up, straightened her gown, and walked to the door. But before she left, she turned back to her father. I have conditions. Name them. I want command of the defensive fleet. Full command, not shared with the military council. And I want Jinho with me. If he agrees, I want him to see what our lives will actually be like. Tholvek smiled. Agreed. Anything else? Yes. After this is over, I want to have a real conversation with him. About what this marriage means. About what we both expect. No more politics. No more ceremonies. Just two people talking honestly. That seems reasonable. Aravin nodded and left the room. She walked through the crystal corridors toward the ceremony hall, her mind racing. She was about to marry a stranger. A human she had met only yesterday. It was insane, but he had asked her what she wanted. No one else had ever done that. The ceremony was brief. Velthari war marriages were always quick, designed for times when there was no time for elaborate celebrations. Aravin and Jinho stood before the emperor, surrounded by witnesses from both species. They spoke the traditional words, made the traditional promises. When it was done, they were married. Legally, officially, binding in both human and Velthari law. Jinho looked stunned. Aravin felt numb. They had done it. There was no going back now. But before anyone could congratulate them, alarms sounded throughout the palace. Red lights flashed. A voice came over the communication system, speaking in urgent Velthari. Aravin understood immediately. The Scarix. They're not waiting. They're attacking now. The ceremony hall erupted in chaos. Guests hurried toward shelters. Military officers rushed to their stations. Aravin was already moving, heading toward the command center. Wait, Jinho called, running after her. What's happening? The Scarix launched their attack early. A full invasion fleet, not just scouts. Aravin was practically running now. I have to get to the command center. I have to lead the defense. Your father said I could come with you. Aravin stopped and turned to look at him. This isn't a simulation. This is real. People will die. Ships will be destroyed. Are you sure you want to see this? I'm sure, Jinho said. You said you wanted me to understand your life. This is part of it. Aravin nodded. Then stay close and don't get in the way. They reached the command center minutes later. The room was full of activity. Officers shouted reports. Holographic displays showed dozens of Scarix ships approaching the planet. The enemy fleet was massive, far larger than the scouts. Status, Aravin commanded as she took her position at the central command station. 40 Scarix warships, 8 carriers, and too many smaller craft to count, an officer reported. They'll reach firing range in 20 minutes. Where's our fleet? Third fleet is in position at your intercept point. First and second fleets are moving to flank positions. Aravin studied the display, her mind working through possibilities. Jinho stood behind her, trying to understand what he was seeing. The Scarix ships looked organic, almost alive. They moved in strange patterns that didn't make sense to him. They're using swarm tactics, Aravin explained, noticing his confusion. Each ship is connected to a central mind. They move as one organism. How do you fight something like that? You cut off the head. Aravin pointed to a larger ship in the center of the formation. That's the command vessel. Destroy it. And the rest become confused. Easier to defeat, but it's surrounded by other ships. You can't reach it. Not directly, no. Aravin was already giving orders. All fleets, prepare for maneuver Omega-7. We're going to give them exactly what they expect, then do something they won't. Jinho watched as Velthari ships moved into position. He didn't understand the tactics, but he could see the pattern. It looked like the Velthari were preparing for a direct assault. Then, at the last second, everything changed. The Velthari ships split apart, moving in different directions. The Scarix formation tried to follow, but they were too slow to react to multiple targets. Now, Aravin commanded. Human fleet, this is your opening. Jinho was surprised to see human ships on the display. He hadn't known they were already here. Ambassador Huan must have positioned them in advance. The human ships moved through the gap in the Scarix formation. They were smaller than the Velthari vessels, but faster. They reached the command ship and began firing. It's working, an officer said excitedly, but Jinho noticed something. The Scarix ships weren't confused. They were regrouping, forming a new pattern. Princess, he said hesitantly. I think they're adapting. Aravin turned to look at the display. Her eyes widened. He's right. They're changing tactics. How did you see that? I don't know, Jinho admitted. I just noticed the pattern was different. Aravin looked at him with new respect. Then she turned back to the display. All ships, Fall back. They're trying to surround us. The battle continued for hours. It was brutal and intense. Aravine commanded with precision, adjusting strategies on the fly. Several times, Jinho noticed small things, patterns that the Velthari telepaths missed because they were too focused on the psychic noise of battle. Humans, unable to sense telepathy, weren't affected by the Scarix's low-level psychic interference. It was a small advantage, but in battle, small advantages could make the difference. "We need more human observers," Aravine said suddenly. "Place one on each command ship. They can spot things we're missing." Already coordinating it, came Ambassador Juan's voice over the communication system. "We're sending tactical analysts to your fleet commanders." The tide of battle began to turn. The Scarix command ship was damaged, leaking atmosphere. Its control over the fleet weakened. The smaller Scarix vessels began making mistakes, attacking in uncoordinated patterns. "Final assault," Aravine commanded. "All ships, concentrate fire on the command vessel." The combined human Velthari fleet unleashed everything they had. The Scarix command ship tried to escape, but it was too damaged. It exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The remaining Scarix ships scattered, fleeing back toward deep space. The Velthari fleet didn't pursue. They had won, but at a cost. "Damage report," Aravin said, her voice tired. 7 ships destroyed. 15 heavily damaged. Casualties. The officer hesitated. 800 confirmed dead. Another 2,000 injured. Aravin closed her eyes. 800 lives. 800 families that would mourn. The price of victory was always too high. Suddenly, alarms blared again. "Hull breach on the command deck," someone shouted. Jinho saw it happening in slow motion. Part of the ceiling was collapsing, damaged from a near miss during the battle. It was falling directly toward Aravin. He didn't think. He just moved. Jinho threw himself at Aravin, pushing her out of the way. They hit the floor hard as crystal, and metal crashed down where she had been standing. Pain exploded in Jinho's shoulder. Something sharp had caught him. He could feel blood. Warm and wet. "Jinho." Aravin was kneeling beside him. "Medical team, now." "I'm okay," Jinho said, though his vision was getting blurry. "Are you hurt? You pushed me out of the way. You saved me." "That's what partners do," Jinho said. Then everything went dark. When he woke up, he was in a medical bay. Dami was there, checking his vital signs. "Hey," she said gently. "Welcome back. What happened?" "You got hit by falling debris. Broken collarbone, deep laceration, mild concussion. You'll be fine in a few days." "And Aravin?" "She hasn't left," Dami said, gesturing to the side. Jinho turned his head, ignoring the pain. Aravin was sitting in a chair beside his bed. She looked exhausted. Her formal gown was torn and stained. But she was there. "You stayed," Jinho said quietly. "Of course I stayed," Aravin replied. "You got hurt protecting me. That's not something I take lightly." "How long was I out?" 3 days. Jinho tried to sit up, but Aravin gently pushed him back down. "Don't move. Doctor's orders. 3 days?" "But the fleet, the casualties, are being handled. The battle is over. We won." Aravin looked at him seriously. "Because of you, partly. Your observations helped us win. I didn't do anything special. You saw patterns we missed. You warned me about their adaptation, and you threw yourself in front of falling debris to protect me. You've been my husband for 3 days, and you've already saved my life." Jinho smiled weakly. "I guess that's one way to start a marriage." 2 weeks after the battle, Jinho was finally cleared to leave the medical bay. His shoulder still ached, but Dami assured him it would heal completely. Aravin had visited him every day, sometimes staying for hours. Other times, just sitting quietly while he slept. They talked about everything during those visits. about Earth and Velth Prime, about their childhoods, about their hopes and fears. It was strange, getting to know someone after marrying them, but somehow it felt right. On his first day out of medical care, Jinho found Aravin in the command center. She was reviewing battle reports, her expression focused. When she saw him, her face lit up. "You're mobile," she said, walking over to him. "How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by falling debris," Jinho said with a slight smile. "But better every day. I'm glad." Aravin gestured to the displays. "I wanted to show you something. The Galactic Council formally recognized our alliance. The Human-Velthari partnership is now official. Other species are already asking to join. That's good news." "It is." Aravin paused. "But I realized something while you were recovering. We got married for politics. We fought a battle together, but we've never actually talked about what we want this marriage to be." Jinho nodded. "You're right. We should probably figure that out. Walk with me?" They left the command center and walked through the palace gardens again. It was evening, and the crystal structures glowed softly in the fading light. They reached the same bench where they had sat 2 weeks ago, though it felt like a lifetime. "I've been reading about human marriages," Aravin said as they sat down. "What do you think?" "I think it's beautiful and terrifying at the same time." She looked at him. "Velthari don't have that tradition. We're practical. We marry for logical reasons. But lately, I've been wondering if we're missing something important." "Like what?" "Like the feeling I get when you walk into a room. Like the way I was terrified when you were hurt. Like how I find myself thinking about you even when I should be focused on work." Aravin's crystalline skin glowed, with a soft pink hue. "I don't know if that's what humans call love, but it's something." Jinho felt his heart beat faster. "I think it might be the beginning of love. It's not something that happens instantly. It's something that grows over time, when two people actually care about each other." "Do you care about me?" Aravin asked quietly. "Yes," Jinho said simply. "I think I started caring about you the moment you stopped your rejection speech and actually looked at me. When you let yourself be vulnerable for just a second. I've never been good at being vulnerable." "I know, but you've been learning, and so have I." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Aravin said, "I want to do something. Something unusual." "What's that?" "I want to have another wedding ceremony. A human one. This time. I want to choose you again. But this time, not because I have to. Because I want to." Jinho was surprised. "Are you sure? We're already married." "I know. But that marriage was about politics and duty. This one would be about us. About choosing each other freely." Aravin took his hand. "Would you marry me again?" "Jinho? Not as a diplomat marrying a princess, but as yourself marrying me?" Jinho looked at their joined hands. Her skin was cool and crystalline, so different from his own, but it felt right. "Yes," he said. "I would marry you 1,000 times." Aravin smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. Once more should be enough. The preparations took 3 weeks. Aravin insisted on learning about human wedding traditions. She studied Earth customs, watched videos of ceremonies, even asked Dami for advice. She wanted to get it right. "You don't have to do this perfectly," Jinho told her one evening as she worried over details. "The ceremony doesn't matter as much as what it represents." "I know," Aravin said, "but I want to. I want to understand your culture. I want to honor what's important to you." Emperor Tholvek watched his daughter's preparations with quiet satisfaction. "I was right about him," he told Aravin one day. "He's good for you." And one. "I was right. Hey, finally 9. And 1. "You were," Aravin admitted. "Though I'm still angry. It took a political crisis to find him. Sometimes the best things come from the worst circumstances." The ceremony was planned for the same crystal hall where they had first met. But this time, it would be decorated in Earth style, with flowers imported from the human colony ships and music from both worlds. Ambassador Juan offered to officiate. "It would be my honor," the old man said. "I've performed 3 weddings in my career. This would be my 4th, and probably my favorite." The day arrived. Jinho stood at the front of the hall, wearing formal Earth clothing. Dami stood beside him as his witness. The hall was filled with both humans and Velthari, the 2 species mingling more easily now. Then Aravine entered. She wore a dress that combined both cultures, Velthari crystal patterns woven into earth silk. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, instead of pulled back in her usual military style. She looked nervous and beautiful. She walked down the aisle alone, having insisted she didn't need to be given away by anyone. When she reached Jinho, she took both his hands in hers. Ambassador Juan began the ceremony. He spoke about the journey that brought them together, about the alliance they represented, about the future they would build. Then it was time for vows. Jinho spoke first, his voice clear and steady. "Aravin, when I first came here, I thought I was doing my duty. I thought I was making a sacrifice for my people. But instead, I found something I didn't expect. I found someone who challenged me, inspired me, and showed me what real strength looks like. I choose you not because I have to, but because I cannot imagine choosing anyone else." Aravin's eyes were bright. When she spoke, her voice trembled slightly. "I resisted this union when it was forced upon me. I was angry and afraid, and so certain that I knew what was best. But when I saw who you truly were, not just a human but someone who saw me as I am, I knew I had found something more valuable than any alliance." She paused, collecting herself. "You asked me what I wanted. No one had ever asked me that before. And now, I know the answer. I want you. I want this partnership. I want to build something together that's ours alone. I choose you, Jinho. Not because I must, but because I want to. Because you make me want to be braver than I've ever been." Jinho squeezed her hands gently. They were both blinking back tears. "By the authority vested in me by Earth and by the Velthari Empire," Ambassador Juan said with a smile, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Again." Quote, everyone laughed. Jinho and Aravin kissed, a gentle touch that spoke of new beginnings and endless possibilities. The celebration afterward was joyful. Humans and Velthari shared food and stories. Dami danced with Velthari officers. Emperor Tholvek made a toast about unity and hope. It felt like the beginning of something new, not just for Jinho and Aravin, but for both their peoples. Late that evening, Aravin and Jinho found themselves back in the gardens, seeking a moment of quiet. They sat on their bench, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. "What happens now?" Aravin asked. "Now we figure it out as we go," Jinho said. "Together." "I'm keeping my command," Aravin said firmly. "I'm not giving up being a warrior. I would never ask you to. That's who you are." "I fell in love with a warrior." "One." Aravin turned to look at him. "You love me?" "I do," Jinho said simply. "Is that okay?" "It's better than okay." Aravin leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you too. I think I have for a while now. I just didn't know what to call it." They sat together as the night deepened around them. In the palace, the celebration continued. In space above them, human and Velthari ships patrolled together. Across the galaxy, species were talking about this unprecedented alliance. But in that moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was 2 people who had found each other across the stars, who had chosen each other freely, who had turned duty into something real and precious. "I have a question," Jinho said after a while. "Ask it. Where do we live?" "Your culture? My culture? They're so different. How do we make this work?" "Arda? Arda? Arda?" Note offended. "Arda? Arda? Arda? Aravind thought for a moment. We split our time. Half here, half on Earth. We learn both worlds. We create something new that belongs to both of us. I like that idea. Good. Because I've already arranged for quarters on a human ship and rooms here in the palace. She smiled. I'm practical. Remember? I plan ahead. Jinho laughed. Yes, you do. It's one of the things I love about you. A month later, they stood together before the Galactic Council. Aravind wore her military uniform. Jinho wore diplomatic robes. They presented their report on the alliance, on the successful defense against the Scarix, on the integration of human and Velthari forces. The council was impressed. 3 more species requested similar alliances. The human-Velthari partnership became a model for cooperation across the galaxy. But for Jinho and Aravind, the real victory was simpler. They had found each other in the midst of chaos. They had chosen each other when they could have walked away. They had built something real from something forced. Do you regret it? Jinho asked Aravind one night as they prepared for sleep in their quarters aboard her flagship. The way we started? Flagship. We have a provided company well. No. Aravind said, thinking carefully. I regret that I fought it so hard at first. I regret that I almost missed this, because I was too stubborn to see what was right in front of me. But I don't regret how we started, because it led us here. 8. Led us here. 8. They regret. Well here hard. 8. 8. 8. Where's here? Home. Aravind said simply. Wherever we are together. That's home. Jinho pulled her close. I like that answer. They fell asleep together, human and alien, warrior and diplomat. 2 people from different worlds who had found a way to make one world together. In the command center, Dami monitored the ship's systems with other crew members. She smiled, thinking about her brother. He had come to this mission thinking he was making a sacrifice. Instead, he had found happiness. Sometimes, she thought, the universe had a strange sense of humor. Ambassador Juan sent a message to Earth that night. The alliance is secure, he wrote. But more importantly, something genuine has grown between Princess Aravind and diplomat Jinho. I believe we may have started something that will change how species interact with each other. Not through force or politics, but through understanding and choice. Years later, when historians looked back at this moment, they would mark it as a turning point. The Human-Velthari alliance did change the galaxy. It showed that cooperation was possible even between vastly different species. It proved that understanding could bridge impossible gaps. But the real story, the one that Jinho and Aravind lived every day, was simpler and more profound. It was about 2 people who were forced together by circumstance and chose to stay together by love. It was about learning to see beyond differences to the person underneath. It was about courage, not the courage to fight enemies, but the courage to be vulnerable, to trust, to choose. Aravind had resisted the wedding. She had been prepared to reject everything, but when she saw Jinho, when she felt his honest, open mind, when she realized he saw her as a person rather than a prize, everything changed. And that change, that moment of recognition and choice, rippled outward in ways neither of them could have predicted. It changed not just their lives, but the fate of entire worlds. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing in the universe isn't technology or weapons or political power. Sometimes, it's simply 2 people choosing each other, freely and completely, and showing everyone else that such choices are possible. That was the real victory. That was the real alliance. And that was the beginning of everything.